The tribunal chamber was too bright for morning. White light poured from hidden panels, reflecting coldly off the silver walls, denying shadows, denying mercy. Rows of alien dignitaries filled the tiered seats, their emerald skin glimmering beneath ceremonial robes, their slit pupils fixed on the solitary human standing before them. Commander Elara Veyne did not lower her gaze. She stood rigid, boots planted on the polished obsidian floor, her torn uniform clinging like a banner of defiance. A dried ribbon of blood traced her cheekbone, crimson against pale skin, but she ignored the sting. Bruises bloomed purple across her jaw. Medals hung askew, yet her eyes burned with clarity. The presiding judge, an elder of the Koresh species, extended his elongated fingers toward her. His voice was measured, but the condescension clung to every syllable. Commander Veyne, you stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Armies. Entire colonies report your fleet struck without declaration, without restraint. You are charged with unleashing atrocities unworthy of a civilized people. Elara's lips twitched, the ghost of a bitter smile. Civilized, she repeated, her voice hoarse but steady. That word should choke you. A murmur rippled through the alien delegates. The translator systems echoed her words in dozens of tongues, each one carrying her scorn like a blade. Yet Elara's focus never wavered from the judges who loomed above her, elevated in judgment, as though height itself could grant righteousness. You demand answers, she continued, yet you already know them. You know why humanity changed, why I'm standing here instead of kneeling. You killed our children. The chamber stirred again, discomfort rolling like a tide. Some of the judges folded their hands, pretending patience. Others curled their lipless mouths in silent contempt. Only the presiding Koresh remained utterly still, his narrow eyes locked on hers. Explain yourself. Tell us why humanity abandoned peace. Why you chose savagery. Elara inhaled sharply, and for a moment she looked past the chamber, past the sterile glow, into memory. She remembered the colony of New Thessaly, blue oceans glinting beneath two suns, sprawling habitats where laughter carried across steel corridors. She remembered schools where children painted pictures of stars they hoped to visit one day. She remembered the broadcast alarms screaming through the colony as the alien warships descended, weapons primed, banners of the Galactic Armies displayed proudly as if extermination were a parade. They came at dawn, she said, her voice lowering, tightening with each syllable. Your army surrounded a colony of farmers, teachers, and children. You didn't even offer them surrender. You called it cleansing. The tribunal's holographic recorders flickered as Elara's words fed into the archive. She kept speaking, each sentence deliberate, etched with restrained fury. You opened fire on schools first. Do you remember that? Rows of children huddled under desks, believing walls would shield them. The first salvo made sure they never had time to scream. You struck evacuation ships, their engines barely ignited, families trapped inside. You knew what you were doing. You celebrated it. Her fists clenched at her sides. She would not allow herself to tremble. I commanded the relief fleet that arrived too late. We counted the bodies. Thousands of them, twisted in the rubble. I carried them with my own hands. Children still clutching toys burned into ash. And then you asked me why humanity turned. For the first time, the chamber fell into silence unbroken by shifting robes or translator static. The aliens stared, some impassive, some visibly uncomfortable. The Koresh judge, however, only leaned closer, his ridged forehead casting faint shadows across his elongated features. Tragedy does not justify vengeance, he said. War begets war. Violence must be tempered by order. You humans let grief unshackle your worst instincts. Elara's laughter was harsh, hollow. Our worst instincts. Do you even know us? For centuries we buried those instincts, hid them under treaties, painted ourselves as dreamers because we believed cooperation was survival. We try to be like you. And for that faith, you butchered our children. We are not unshackled now. We are simply remembering. She raised her chin, her defiance filling the chamber. Her voice carried with a clarity that cut through translation filters, needing no embellishment. You sit in judgment as if morality belongs to you. But there is no justice here. There is only the silence of the dead, and the truth I speak for them. You ended peace when you slaughtered the innocent. You forced us to reveal what humanity becomes when cornered. The presiding judge's hands curled inward. You speak as though humanity is owed mercy. No, Elara said firmly. Mercy is dead. You killed it alongside our children. The silence stretched, heavy as lead. Somewhere above, one of the alien dignitaries hissed a curse in his own tongue. Another muttered about human arrogance. But the words that would matter most were Elara's, echoing in the minds of all present, impossible to dismiss. She stepped forward, ignoring the guards' tensing grips on their shock batons. Her voice rose, her final statement a brand seared into the tribunal's record. You look at me and see a savage. You see a species unworthy of your order. But know this, our children were your last chance at mercy. You took them from us, and in doing so, you took away the dream we offered this galaxy. What remains will not bow, will not break, and will not forgive. Her words hung in the sterile air like smoke refusing to disperse. The judges stared down, some with disdain, some with unease, but none with triumph. For all their accusations, the alien tribunal could not disguise the tremor of doubt crawling at the edge of their authority. Elara stood alone in the glaring light, but she did not feel small. Her grief had already been stripped bare, leaving only the tempered steel of her will. If they condemned her, she would wear it as proof of their hypocrisy. If they listened, perhaps the galaxy would learn too late the danger they had awakened. The presiding Koresh finally spoke, his voice slow, deliberate. This tribunal will recess to deliberate on your words. You will be confined until judgment is rendered. Guards approached, but Elara remained motionless, her gaze locked on the assembled judges. Her final words pierced the chamber as they placed restraints on her wrists. You didn't just kill our children. You killed your chance at mercy. Whatever comes next, remember, you summoned it. And as the tribunal emptied, the weight of her promise lingered, heavier than any verdict could ever be. The cell was narrow, its walls smooth and seamless, built to deny comfort and deny time. Commander Elara Veyne sat on the low bench, her wrists still bound, though the guards had left. A faint hum reverberated through the air, the pulse of machines ensuring she remained observed from every angle. She closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Every time her lids lowered, she saw faces, children smiling in sunlight, only to dissolve into ash when memory replayed the massacre. Grief had burned itself into her, yet it no longer consumed, it fueled. She knew the tribunal believed her broken. They mistook stillness for defeat. In truth, Elara was measuring the past against what humanity had become since New Thessaly's fall. The world she carried within her was no longer the world that entered the Galactic Armies full of optimism. It was something else, something forged in tragedy, sharpened by rage. The door hissed, breaking her reverie. A man stepped inside, human like her, though clad in the dark gray uniform of the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. Ambassador Corvin Hale, Earth's appointed envoy to the tribunal, regarded her with weary eyes. Lines of exhaustion scored his face, yet his posture remained stiff, controlled. He carried the burden of representing humanity's voice in chambers where the galaxy pretended justice reigned. Elara, he said quietly, taking the seat opposite her. You made an impact today. The chamber hasn't been that silent in decades. Silence isn't victory, she replied. It's hesitation. They'll twist my words until I'm the monster they need me to be. Corvin studied her, as though searching for the woman she had been before grief reshaped her. He remembered her as a fleet commander, known for strategy and restraint, praised for keeping casualties low. The woman before him still had that steel, but something new burned in her, something darker, unyielding. They will judge you harshly, he admitted. The council believes humanity is spiraling out of control. Your speech confirmed their fears. And what would you have me do? She snapped, then softened. lowering her voice. Pretend our dead never existed? Apologize for our anger. Corvin's hands tightened. I don't ask you to apologize. I ask you to understand the scale. If they brand us savages, we'll lose allies, trade, every chance at survival outside our system. The word survival sparked in her mind like flint striking stone. Survival had always been humanity's creed, long before stars opened their gates. You think we need them? She asked bitterly. That we cannot endure without their benevolence? You still believe in the dream that died with our children? Corvin leaned forward. And what do you believe now? Elara met his gaze, unflinching. I believe we showed the galaxy the face we wanted them to see. Curious, peaceful, cooperative. But when they slaughtered our children, they didn't just kill lives, they tore off the mask. What stands now is older, truer. Humanity doesn't survive by dreaming. We survive by fighting. The words hung heavy between them. Corvin wanted to argue, to cling to hope that diplomacy could salvage their place in the stars. But he could not deny the truth of her grief. He had walked among the graves on Earth, too. He had seen parents collapse beside tiny coffins. He had heard the collective scream of a species betrayed. They fear what you're becoming, he said softly. They should, Elara answered. Her conviction unsettled him. Yet he also felt a stirring of pride. It was a dangerous pride, one that whispered humanity's fragility might finally be over, replaced by something the galaxy had never known. The hum of the cell deepened, signaling the end of visitation. Corvin rose reluctantly, pausing at the threshold. The council meets tomorrow. Your fate will be sealed then. Elara gave him a faint, grim smile. Not just mine, all of ours. When he left, silence reclaimed the cell. Elara closed her eyes again, not to rest, but to remember. She remembered Earth after the massacre, her return to a planet drowning in mourning. Vast plazas filled with candles, their flickering light stretching for miles. Screens broadcasting names, faces, lives cut short. People who once debated art and science now spoke only of vengeance. The grief was bottomless, yet it hardened into something unbreakable. She remembered the debates in the Council of Nations. Diplomats like Corvin urging restraint, pleading for patience, warning of alien retaliation. But their voices were drowned beneath the roar of billions demanding justice. The voices of farmers, engineers, teachers, ordinary people rose into one cry: never again. Humanity changed in those days. Factories once devoted to commerce turned overnight into war foundries. Scientists who studied medicine applied their genius to armor and weaponry. Generals exhumed strategies once deemed relics of barbaric ages. What rose from grief was not madness, but focus, an entire species aligning behind a single truth: they would never be prey again. Elara had walked among those crowds, had felt the pulse of her people like a drumbeat in her veins. She had seen mothers holding photographs of lost children, vowing their names would be avenged. And in those faces, she understood her purpose. She would carry their fury where it needed to go. She would remind the galaxy that humanity's softness was always a choice, not a weakness. The cell walls did not feel as suffocating after those memories. They felt like a crucible, and she was the blade being tempered. Hours passed without measure, until finally a low tone signaled dawn in the tribunal's artificial cycle. Guards entered, rigid and silent, their weapons glinting with faint energy halos. They gestured for her to rise. Elara stood tall, her wrists bound once more, and allowed them to lead her toward the chamber. Yet within her chest, she carried the memory of Earth's grief forged into resolve. Whatever sentence they spoke, whatever accusations they hurled, it would not matter. Humanity was no longer asking permission to exist. As the great doors of the tribunal chamber opened, she glimpsed the rows of alien faces again. Some masked in arrogance, some faintly trembling, but all watching closely. Behind her, the weight of billions pressed invisibly, their voices echoing through her as if carried across the stars. She walked forward into the light, unbowed. And as she met the presiding judge's eyes, She thought of the words she would speak next. Not for them, but for humanity. The galaxy had demanded to see what lay beyond the mask. Soon they would. The tribunal chamber was heavier now, though its light had not dimmed. The air carried tension so thick even the translators faltered, as if machines too could sense the unspoken truth trembling beneath the proceedings. Commander Elara Veyne stood unshaken at the center of the floor, her presence both defiant and unnerving. Her body bore bruises, her uniform hung torn, but her gaze remained steady. She no longer addressed the council as a supplicant. She spoke as one who held the weight of an entire species at her back. "Do you know what happens," she said, voice echoing through the sterile air, "when you push humanity to the brink?" Her words forced stillness upon the chamber. The presiding Koresh shifted in his seat, his elongated features betraying irritation, but he did not interrupt. The other alien dignitaries watched with guarded interest, each trying to decipher whether this battered woman embodied desperation or power. "You expected us to crumble," Elara continued. "You thought grief would hollow us out until we begged for mercy. But humanity does not bend that way. We do not fall into silence. We adapt." She remembered, in vivid clarity, the months after the massacre when the colonies rallied. In underground bunkers and orbital stations, plans were drafted not by generals alone, but by ordinary citizens who refused to be powerless. Farmers repurposed harvest drones into carriers of explosive payloads. Hackers who once pirated entertainment systems rewired alien communication satellites, turning them into weapons of deception. Children who survived carried messages from colony to colony, their voices hard with determination far older than their years. "We prepared differently than you ever imagined," she said, locking eyes with the rows of alien judges. "You fight with tradition, ceremony, rules older than your empires. Humanity fights with necessity. When you burn our schools, we teach strategy in the ruins. When you destroy our ships, we salvage your wreckage and make it our own. You killed our children, and from their ashes rose an army you cannot predict." A rustle spread among the alien seats. Some of the council exchanged uneasy glances. They were used to enemies who mirrored them, who fought within boundaries. The thought of a species that embraced chaos, that found strength in pain, unsettled their certainty. Ambassador Corvin Hale sat among the observers, watching Elara's every word unfold like sparks on dry tinder. He felt the conflicting pull within himself, the diplomat who feared escalation and the human who longed for vengeance. In Elara, he saw the balance tipping, and he wondered if he too would surrender to that darker tide. The presiding judge finally spoke, his voice like a blade cutting through the silence. "You speak of adaptation, yet you call it justice. What proof have you that humanity is not simply lashing out in blind rage?" Elara's lips curved into a grim smile. Proof was the very thing humanity had been preparing. Even as she stood in chains, she knew her people were moving across the stars. In hidden workshops, engineers had birthed weapons the Council could not comprehend. Stealth crafts woven with scavenged alien alloys prowled through voids where no fleet could track them. Viruses designed by human programmers seeped into the networks of the Galactic Armies, rewriting orders, turning their communications into chaos. Humanity had learned to fight not where their enemies were strong, but where they were complacent. "You think we're blind in our fury," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "But rage sharpened us. Our fleets no longer meet you in open battle. We strike from shadows, from silence. You cannot defend against what you cannot anticipate. That is the side of humanity you summoned, the side that fights wars not with numbers, but with imagination." Gasps broke from several alien delegates as whispers rippled through the chamber. Some had already heard rumors, fleets disappearing in dead sectors, supply lines vanishing into silence, commanders waking to find their entire command structure inverted by a virus carrying a mocking human signature. Until now, no one had dared confirm such stories. Corvin's breath caught. He had suspected humanity was preparing something, but hearing it laid bare unsettled even him. It was not madness. It was precision. Elara was not confessing weakness. She was warning them. The presiding Koresh leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Are you admitting to orchestrating these acts of terror? Elara tilted her head, letting the silence draw tight. I am admitting nothing you can punish, because punishment implies authority. What I'm giving you is truth. Humanity has stepped into the war you began, and we will end it on terms of our choosing. Her words sliced through the chamber, undeniable in their conviction. Even those who despised her felt the shift. She was no longer a defendant, but the harbinger of a storm already moving through the galaxy. The memory of humanity's first retaliation rose unbidden. A strike carried out not with overwhelming force, but with precision so calculated it unsettled even Elara. An alien outpost, fortified and arrogant, had woken to find every weapon disabled, every shield collapsed, every communication severed. And instead of fire, humanity left behind a single broadcast, children's laughter echoing through empty corridors, a reminder of what had been stolen. It was a message more terrifying than destruction. It was promise. She let the chamber sit with that image before she spoke again. We could have burned you as you burned us. Instead, we reminded you what you tried to erase. But make no mistake, if you force our hand again, the fire you fear will come. The tribunal seemed smaller in that moment, the alien judges diminished by the scope of what she revealed. The council had believed itself untouchable, enforcers of order across the stars. Now, they were beginning to understand they had awakened something that slipped beyond their grasp. Corbin's chest tightened with conflicting emotions. He should have been horrified, yet he felt a surge of pride. Humanity was no longer crawling into the galaxy asking for a seat. It was carving one with blood and brilliance. The presiding Koresh's voice broke through once more, though it wavered faintly at the edges. You threaten the peace of the galaxy. Elara straightened, her chains clinking softly. There is no peace. Not after you slaughtered the innocent. You called it cleansing. We call it awakening. What you face now is not the humanity you thought you could break. It is the other side, the side you will wish had stayed buried. The chamber fell into silence, so complete it bordered on reverence. The alien judges looked down at her, but none could speak. Even the presiding Koresh seemed momentarily without words. Elara stood tall beneath their scrutiny, her presence undeniable. She had not begged, had not justified. She had revealed, and in revealing, she had shifted the ground beneath their feet. When the guards finally moved to escort her back to confinement, she walked with a calm that belied the storm outside. For even within the walls of the tribunal, she knew humanity's vengeance was already unfolding among the stars. And though the council believed themselves still in control, Elara's final words echoed through the chamber like prophecy. The galaxy had demanded to see the other side of humanity, and it would. The tribunal chamber trembled as though the very walls had absorbed Elara's words and now struggled to contain them. Guards shifted uneasily, their weapons humming with restrained energy, but no one dared break the silence that hung like a storm cloud. The alien judges sat frozen, their expressions strained, caught between outrage and fear. Elara Veyne stood unbowed, her chains little more than ornaments now, for the true weight in the room had shifted. She was no longer the accused. She was the reckoning they had invited upon themselves. Then a sound pierced the silence. It was faint at first. A stuttering tone carried through the tribunal's communication systems. The presiding Koresh judge frowned, gesturing for the feed to be silenced, but the signal only grew louder. Static gave way to a voice, human, unmistakable, raw with urgency. This is Fleet Command, the voice announced, unshaken despite the distortion. Operation Ashen Dawn is underway. Target sectors neutralized. Repeat, the Army strongholds are falling. A collective gasp rippled across the chamber. Screens along the walls flickered to life, unbidden, displaying images of burning ships, collapsing fortresses, alien commanders scrambling in chaos. Human fleets, smaller, sleeker, improvised from scavenged wrecks and stolen technology, cut through the stars with surgical precision. Where alien doctrine demanded grand armadas, humanity's war was waged with shadows and fire. The judges erupted in a storm of voices, their translator systems struggling to keep pace. Words like treachery, terrorism, and extermination filled the chamber, but none of it masked the undercurrent of fear. They had dismissed humanity as fragile, unprepared, and naive. Now they watched the evidence of their miscalculation play out in real time. Elara did not look at the screens. She already knew what they would show. She had trusted her people to strike when the galaxy was most distracted, and there was no greater distraction than this tribunal. Instead, she fixed her gaze on the presiding Koresh. "You asked for proof," she said calmly. "Now you have it. Humanity has entered your war, and already the balance shifts. Do you still call us children?" The judge's face contorted, but the words he sought would not come. His authority crumbled in the shadow of the truth. Their enemy was no longer at the gates, but within their walls. Ambassador Corvin Hale, seated among the observers, rose to his feet. His chest tightened with awe and dread as he turned toward Elara. "You planned this," he whispered, the realization dawning. Elara's eyes softened only for him, just for a heartbeat. "I didn't plan alone. Humanity planned it. I am merely the voice you chose to hear." Corvin's breath caught. He had fought to keep humanity tethered to diplomacy, but now he understood the futility. The galaxy had written them off as dreamers. The massacre had carved away the illusion. What remained was something both terrifying and magnificent. The presiding Koresh slammed a clawed hand against the dais, his composure fraying. "This is an act of madness. You cannot hope to defeat the Galactic Armies. We are countless. We are eternal." Elara's laugh was low, devoid of humor. "So were empires before you. Ask the ruins scattered across your own stars. Eternity is a lie told by the powerful to comfort themselves. We don't need to match your numbers. We only need to remind you that even giants bleed." The images on the screens proved her words true. Alien fleets faltered as human infiltration spread, systems collapsing, engines frozen mid-flight, weapons redirected against their own. Panic gripped soldiers who had never faced an enemy that refused their rules. Humanity had weaponized fear itself, and it was spreading faster than any fire. The chamber filled with overlapping voices, some calling for immediate retaliation, others urging restraint, a few whispering that perhaps humanity could not be subdued. It was chaos in its purest form, and Elara stood at its center like the eye of a storm. She stepped forward, chains clinking softly, yet with every step the judges seemed to retreat into themselves. "You brought me here to condemn humanity," she said, her voice carrying above the din. "But it is you who stand condemned. You lit the fire when you slaughtered our children. Now you will learn what burns when humanity stops holding back." Corvin felt the truth of it in his bones. He wanted to protest, to beg her to temper her words, but he knew she was beyond temperance. She was speaking not as a commander, not even as a woman, but as the embodiment of her people's grief transformed into resolve. The presiding Koresh tried to rally, his voice strained. "You think this will end in your victory? It will end in your extinction." Elara's eyes flashed. "Then remember this as you fight us. We are a species born from extinction events. We survived famine, plagues, and wars of our own making. Every time, we came back stronger. If you burn our worlds, we will rebuild in the ashes. If you kill us, those who remain will rise fiercer than before. You can erase cities, fleets, entire colonies, but you cannot erase humanity's will to endure." The words settled like judgment itself, undeniable, unshakable. Even the alien dignitaries who despised her could not deny the terrible certainty of her vow. The chamber guards moved to restrain her further, but the presiding Koresh hesitated, his authority unraveling. To silence her now would be to admit fear, and fear was already spreading too quickly among them. Elara's voice dropped, quiet yet piercing. "You want to see the other side of humanity. Now you will. And when you do, You will wish the dreamers had been enough. The screens flared again with fresh reports. Another fleet down, another fortress burning. The tribunal dissolved into chaos. The illusion of order shattered. No verdict could be spoken now. No ruling could matter. The galaxy had already entered a new age, one where humanity's shadow stretched long across the stars. Elara closed her eyes for a moment, and behind the lid she saw them. The children of New Thessaly, their laughter, their bright eyes. She carried them with her, not as ghosts, but as torches lighting her path. Whatever the galaxy thought of her, she knew her purpose was unshakable. Humanity had been underestimated for the last time. When she opened her eyes, she met Corvin's gaze. He stood pale, torn between despair and pride, but in the end he gave her a single, faint nod. He understood. Perhaps he always had. The guards moved to drag her away, yet she walked of her own will, head high, chains rattling like distant thunder. The tribunal's uproar followed her, but she paid it no mind. The verdict had already been delivered, not by alien judges but by humanity itself. And as the chamber doors sealed behind her, one truth echoed across the stars. The galaxy had killed humanity's children, and in doing so, had awakened the other side of their nature. A side that would not forgive. A side that would not stop.